I'm Andrew Lawson, Public Information Officer for the City of Ark City, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about what's coming up on the next City Commission meeting agenda. First, before we get started, I'd like to make a small correction. Last week I previewed that we would be hosting Chamber Coffee next week at the new water treatment facility. Due to some construction delays and some other factors, we decided we wanted to push that back a few weeks, so that is actually going to be on March 1st. We just want to make sure the facility is in top-notch shape so we can hopefully have a tour of it for people who attend. We're also looking at having a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Right now it appears that that's going to be February 22nd, probably around the noon hour, and you can look for more details on that coming up soon. At noon today, the City Commission will have a study session in the City Manager's office at City Hall. And they're going to be talking about an ordinance that has been proposed that will be on the agenda Tuesday night. We don't anticipate that they will vote on this ordinance next week. It's just an opportunity to get the word out to the public that these are the changes that we're considering, and it's what we call a first reading. And then we will allow 2 weeks between then and the next meeting for potential feedback and comment from the public. Typically then we would have the second reading, and that's when it would usually be approved. That's kind of the process that's been taking place on these complex ordinances. So they'll be talking about this ordinance today and going through it section by section to kind of understand the changes that are in place. And the reason we do this at a study session when it's a very complicated issue is that way we don't have a really long night meeting and we're kind of boring people with the details. It's an opportunity for the commissioners to ask in-depth questions, really get into things that they might want to adjust. Depending on how that conversation goes, we may determine that there's some changes that need to be made. So we will still have the first reading, but then we could make some adjustments before we bring the ordinance back the following meeting. So what is in this ordinance? Well, it does many things. First off, it amends Chapter 14 of Municipal Code, which is the section that deals with building regulations. Specifically, this ordinance will be amending the last few sections of that chapter, and it's going to deal with licensing and permitting of contractors and our Building Trades Advisory Board. Now, as far as contractors go, initially when we started this quite a few months ago, we were just looking at creating a couple of new definitions. One is for a backflow prevention contractor, which is a person who's qualified to install backflow prevention devices, such as those that can be found on lawn irrigation systems. And it's a way to make it possible for someone to do that trade but not have to be a fully licensed plumber. Of course, plumbers and mechanical specialists can also do this sort of work if they're licensed through the state, so we've also made provisions for that. Another new contractor definition we created is tree removal contractor, and this is defined as any person, firm, or corporation that in exchange for compensation removes branches from a tree and or removes or cuts down an entire tree. Originally, this was a more expansive definition that dealt with tree trimming and potentially even pest removal, but we've kind of dialed it back to just the main big operations that can really cause injury or harm to people or property. This particular kind of contractor would be required to be licensed, but they would not have to pull a permit for any job, so there wouldn't be any inspections going on. Mainly the purpose of this is so that they post bond with the city and that they provide proof of their liability insurance. So if something does happen, the homeowner can come to us, the city, and collect damages or recompense. They could also pursue something in court, but this is an ability for the city to step in immediately and say, okay, we can pull their bond. And oftentimes that could also result in them having some difficulty finding work in other cities if that ever happens. So it's a protection for property owners primarily. And the majority of the tree trimmers and tree removal businesses in this area have spoken about this, and this is something they're in favor in. They're licensed in other cities as well. A lot of our other contractor definitions also had to be adjusted during this process. Many of them have not been dealt with since the original code was written. And what we found as our city attorney looked into it is that there's just a lot of duplicate language, and there's some things that are kind of outdated, or they even sometimes conflict with each other. So we've really taken some efforts to clean up the code and just generally make these definitions easier to understand. In most cases, the length of them was cut in half or more by the changes that have been proposed. So hopefully this will be a lot easier for people to comprehend and kind of understand the differences of things and why certain things require licensing and others don't. So that's another change in this ordinance. One section that we hope will be popular with property owners in town is a section that will allow them to do more kinds of work on their own properties than is currently allowed under municipal code. Specifically, if they have some knowledge in the area of electrical, plumbing or mechanical systems, this provision of code would allow them to do some of that work on their own home without having to hire it out. There are several requirements that they'd have to meet before that would be allowed, and they would still have to pull a permit and have the job inspected as any other contractor would, but they wouldn't have to pay somebody to do the work. They could do it themselves and pay for their own materials. This would only be allowed on an owner's own private single-family residence or any attached accessory buildings. So if it's something they own that's a commercial property, they're still required by code to have a contractor come in and be the one who does that. And that's a life safety measure. That's just because those are either public buildings or they're buildings that are being rented out to people, and there's an obligation on the city's part to make sure that those systems are safe. This ordinance makes some changes to the composition of our Building Trades Advisory Board. Currently, that board has 2 plumbers, 2 electricians, 2 mechanical specialists, 2 general contractors, and a layman who is familiar with the code. If this passes, the 2 general contractor positions would be changed to at-large positions. So there essentially would be 3 at-large positions that could be general contractors, limited contractors, laymen, or just anyone in general, hopefully that would have some familiarity with the codes and the requirements. And this was an attempt to kind of compromise. Some people wanted to add some seats to the board, but the board has already got 9 members, which is about as big as you can have and still be functional. So this was trying to give the commission a little more flexibility in who they appoint to these positions, and not necessarily have to be general contractors, which is kind of the highest level of a contractor as far as knowledge and skills. Those are the major changes in this ordinance. There are other little minor things. If this is something you were interested in learning more about, you're certainly welcome to attend the study session. Again, it's at noon today, and it's open to the public. The City Commission will have a regular meeting at 5:30 p.m. Tuesday in the Commission Room at City Hall. In addition to the ordinance that they will discuss today, they also will consider a couple of other items that I wanted to highlight. The next item I would like to discuss is a resolution that will reestablish the CIP committee for 2018. As I mentioned last week, we have sent out the citizen input forms, and I've already started to receive some responses. So thank you to those of you who have taken the time to send in your thoughts. And if you haven't yet had a chance to fill out that form, please consider doing that and getting it back to us. We really rely on that feedback for this committee to do its work. We will create the committee Tuesday night, and it's just authorizing it to exist again for this year. On February 20th, we will probably appoint the citizen committee members. There will probably be 6 people appointed. That's what we did last year. And we've written the resolution this year so that at least 3 of those 6 have to be new members of the committee who weren't a part of the process last year. This is a way for us to cycle people through and just expose more citizens to how this works and give more people a chance to have some input. If this sounds like something you might be interested in, the time commitment is probably 3 to 5 meetings in March and April, usually 2 weeks apart. Last year we did these on Wednesday evenings. They lasted from 2 to 3 hours, depending on how much we had to talk about. We do provide dinner for all the committee members to compensate you for your time. And it's just a chance to go through all the different projects coming up for the police and fire departments, public works. We talk about street projects. We'll probably be talking a lot about Wilson Park, the wastewater treatment plant, and some other big things coming up. So again, this is an opportunity to have some input directly on a plan that goes on and affects the budget when the commissioners make funding decisions. There are a couple purchase items on the agenda that might attract some notice. They're on the consent agenda, which is where we put items that we consider to be fairly routine. Of course, the commissioners will have a chance today to ask questions about items on the consent agenda, but on Tuesday night, they typically pass all the items in one motion. It's just a way to speed up the meeting and not have extended discussion on simple matters. One of these purchases is for a new manual forklift to be used at the new water treatment plant. This is an important piece of equipment because there are very large containers of chemicals that have to be transported on a regular basis, and they have to be placed on scales, and the weights have to be extremely accurate in order to make sure that what they call the dosage of the chemicals in the water is the right proportion. So it's very important to have a piece of equipment that'll let them move this stuff around efficiently. So that's what that is for. And there's also an agreement proposed on the consent agenda. It will be a 5-year agreement to purchase tasers from a certain company. And the reason that the police department wants to do this is because it will allow them to lock in pricing for 5 years. The price of tasers is continuing to rise. It's over $1,500 a unit now. But this would lock it in closer to $1,200 per unit, and it would be the flat price for the next 5 years. And that way they can break it up and know what their budgeting is going to be. It also has some value for trade-in of current units. So that's a pretty good thing. It's just another way we try to save taxpayer money. And finally, at the beginning of Tuesday's meeting, we will be honoring Anika Hernandez. She is the daughter of the city manager, and she's being honored for winning the statewide contest from the League of Kansas Municipalities. She wrote the winning essay about if she were mayor, and I think she'll be talking to the commissioners a little bit about some of her ideas, and it might be something that we end up discussing at the CIP committee level. Once again, the City Commission meeting will be at 5:30 p.m. Tuesday at City Hall. It is open to the public. If you have something you'd like to talk to the commissioners about that isn't on the agenda, we ask that you sign up beforehand and let us know about that. Or if you just want to talk about something that is on the agenda, generally we ask that you sign up for that as well, but you don't necessarily have to. You just have to wait to be recognized by the mayor. But we do hope citizens will come to meetings and participate in the process. It's always important for the commissioners to hear feedback from the residents.